This is something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. It's been playing in my mind. The connection of the ego and the higher consciousness, which is the inner being and the soul, and the separation that seems to occur between the two, where when they could be working together, they seem to be divided, which is causing a lot of difficulties with the way in which we are handling life. So if you think about it, we have a natural instinct born into us. So as a baby, you instinctively know how to feed. It comes natural to you. You naturally know how to fill your nappy up, so to speak, empty the body of toxins. That becomes natural. You naturally know how to move your body. Instinctively you crawl, instinctively you walk. So for the first couple of years of your life, you're using your instinct to survive as a human being. Somewhere along, I don't know, around the age of 2, you start to create a personality, and with the personality comes the ego. Now, the ego is there to protect us because the ego is there to bring up fear. It's been there the whole time. You know, back in the dinosaur days, you needed to have fear to know how to run away from danger. So the ego has primarily been there to protect us. As evolution has gone on, it feels like the ego is now not only there to protect us, but we live so much out of the ego, like we don't want to feel certain emotions. We protect ourselves from having to go through those emotions, which is the ego. So as you're born, you have your soul, which is a higher consciousness. It already knows so much. It is the higher consciousness, and the soul is very accepting, and it is non-judgmental. So over here you have the soul, the higher consciousness, and then you have the ego, and they can work together. But sometimes what happens is as you're going through life, things are happening, your ego is taking over more, it's trying to protect you more. If you've been hurt as a child, if you was hurt growing up, if you've had a lot of hurt emotions, the ego side of you is going to control your life more than your higher consciousness. And the more you put the ego as a way of living and suppress the higher consciousness, you lose yourself. You just get you don't even know who you are anymore. And this is what happens to so many people when they go through such a big trauma in their life and everything is broken down. They've either had a diagnosis is putting their life on the line, or a relationship has broken up, have been heartbroken. Something has happened which is such a trauma in their life. They're looking for their soul, their higher consciousness again, and they've lost the connection to it because they've been living so much out of the ego. It's taken over their way of life. So the ego is, I believe what it does is the ego loves to feel good. The ego will do anything it can to feel good because it does not like it's connected to our emotions. And it doesn't like having to feel the difficult emotions. So it'll create, what I believe a lot of people do is they create a character from the ego which they want the rest of the world to see. So this happens a lot with people that are not connected to their higher self. They don't like who they are, so they create a character to portray, and they will choose a character that they admire, and then they become that character. And when you play a character for so long, you become it, and you've lost connection with your original inner being. You just lose that connection. That happens a lot with narcissistic people. People are not born narcissists. They're not born that way. Something happens in their childhood, growing up, where they couldn't get the attention and the love that they needed. And the only way that they could get attention and love is to create attention for themselves in other ways. So if they can manipulate other people to get attention, they're feeding, their ego is being fed what it needs. They don't care that they hurt other people, as long as they're feeding their ego. And a thing with a narcissist is they have learnt from a very early age to disconnect from their emotion. They just like they've disconnected from their higher self over here, their ego has disconnected from emotion, because that's what the ego is. The ego is connected to our emotions. So they've disconnected. So a narcissist can say to you, I love you, because they know that's what they're meant to say, but they can't feel it. They can't feel it inside. And so many people, they get burnt by having someone like that in their life. An empathic person will get hurt by having someone like that in their life. And they forget to understand that that person can't feel like they do. An empath can feel love. An empath can feel compassion. A narcissist just can't feel it. So I actually feel really sorry for them, because something happened in their childhood growing up where they just disconnected from that feeling. And the only way that they know how to manipulate everybody to feed themselves, because they just don't like who they are. And I think we forget to see what somebody else is going through. We're so wrapped up. The ego gets wrapped up in how do I feel, but the more you're connected to your higher consciousness, the more you also worry about how someone else is feeling and what happened to them. There's something that the more and more I've delved into the living life through the ego and living life with a more higher consciousness, because the more higher your consciousness becomes, the more you don't want to live from the ego. You can go one way or the other. You can live from the ego and you live from the higher consciousness, and the ego drops away, which is what monks, people that meditate on a daily basis, their consciousness expands so widely that they tend to leave the ego. They don't need to live by the ego anymore, because they're so at peace with who they are and they're so connected, they don't need that ego. But something that I was thinking about the other day, which for me personally, I would always, if somebody around me was dying, like if I knew that they were dying, they were very sick, I didn't want them to die, not because, obviously I cared for them, but it was more, I didn't want to have to go through the feeling of grief. It was selfish on my behalf. And it was really difficult for me to admit that, because I'm a kind person and I love other people and I really care for other people. But when I really got down to it, I don't want somebody else to die, because I will have to feel the grief, and my ego does not want to have to feel grief. I would say to my kids all the time, be careful, don't have an accident. Of course, I didn't want them to have an accident, but I was selfish because I was the one that also didn't want to have to go through the emotions I was going to have to go through for what happened to them. that's what happens with an empathetic person. You feel what someone else is going through, and so this inner being part of me was feeling what they were going through, but the ego part of me was saying, I don't want to feel that. That's not a comfortable feeling. The ego does not like uncomfortable feelings. The ego searches for wanting to feel good. That's why you also, in relationships, you want yourself, you want your ego to feel good. So you want the attention from someone else. So you'll put the attention on, I really like that. I really like that person over there. And I really want them to like me back because I want the attention. My ego wants attention. My ego wants love. My ego wants satisfaction. And it's something you're struggling to give to yourself. You're needing to get it from someone else because you can't give it to yourself. There is so many people that have no idea who they are. That's like letting go of the labels. It's not like if I said to you, describe yourself in a couple of words, you might give me a description that you're kind and you're caring and maybe you're stubborn. That's your personality. You're describing the personality that you've created and the belief that you have of yourself. If you get rid of all those labels, if you're not a daughter, if you're not a son, if you're not a wife, you're not a husband, if you get rid of all the labels, who are you? Like that, there is that inner being, that light energy, inner being that came here to experience life. That's your higher consciousness, and it's while you're here in the physical body, your ego has been created in a way to make you feel good. So you're quite often looking for outside things to make you feel good. That person over there makes me feel good. Money makes me feel good. Doing that job makes me feel good. Helping people makes me feel good. And we kind of do most of life wanting to feel good and not accepting, because the soul will accept anything. The soul will accept not feeling good. The soul accepts any situation that's happening with non-judgment. If the soul had chosen an experience to come to earth, and then at the age of 30, the soul already knew that there was going to be an accident and someone was going to end up in a wheelchair. So the soul has chosen that experience. As hard as that's going to be, the soul says, I'm going to go through that experience and I will understand what it's going to be like to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. I'll understand everything around that. I'll understand all the emotions that go with it. I'll understand the strengths, the weaknesses that go through it. I'll understand. The soul will expand in awareness through that experience. But if you said to the ego, at the age of 30, you're going to end up in a wheelchair, the ego would be like, hey, whoa, no, I don't want that. That's not going to make me feel good. No, I don't want that. That's where the difference is, because the soul will accept and the ego won't accept. And that happens so much in everything that's happening in your life when it's turning to shit and things aren't happening the way the ego wants. You're fighting against it. And then you think life's unfair, everything's happening to me, woe is me, because you just can't accept that was a part of your chosen direction. Can you understand where I'm coming from here? Like I think the soul and the ego can work very well together. It's like I will quite often do things and I think to myself, is that Is that coming from in here? Is this a purpose for my growth and my expansion? Or is this just something that my ego is choosing to just feel good about myself for the moment? I'm trying to, quite often I'll just question myself where my motive is coming from, because I do believe they're both vital and they work together, but your instinct is, why do you stop using your instinct? How many times have you said, you've known, instinctively you've thought to yourself, I shouldn't do that. I really shouldn't do that. Nah, I shouldn't do that. And you go and do it. And you go and do it, and it messes up, it goes wrong, and then you go, I knew I shouldn't have done that. So your instinct keeps telling you, and you tell about that your ego's over here going, well, I'll do it anyway, because you might just feel good if you do it. If you do it, you might feel good about yourself. So there's kind of this battle going on between the two, and if you merged them together, you wouldn't have half the problems that you're having. It's like so much more acceptance when you just do it from your instinct, from your inner being. So I've been thinking about this a lot, this question about what so many people living from this egotistical state and comparing themselves, watching what other people are doing and feeling like I need to be up with them, I need to be copying them, I'm missing out, I need to be doing something to be getting something in return. That's another one. The ego wants to feel validated. The ego wants to, like, I'm not going to love you unless I get something in return. There's so much conditional love out there. Normally people will give unconditional love to a pet because they don't get anything back from the pet. They're just quite happy to care for a pet. With people, you give love to somebody else, but you expect something in return. Because if you feel like, I'm just giving and giving and giving to that person and I'm not getting anything in return, your ego is saying, well, I'm not getting anything out of this. Whereas your soul will be going, that's fine. That's fine to be giving and not getting anything back. But the ego is saying, but I want something back. You see the difference between the two? When I was watching that video with Jeremy Griffiths, he was saying, you have a mother that is feeding her child, nurturing her child. The mother is selfish because the mother is feeding and nurturing that child because she wants that child to grow up and continue on the line, to continue on the DNA, to continue on their life. So she's actually selfishly nurturing and loving and bringing up that child because she wants that child to grow. Whereas a child that is being fed and nurtured by its mother sees that as unselfish, an unselfish act. The mother is caring, like that person is caring for me and not expecting anything in return. So the child sees the mother as unselfish. The mother is actually being selfish because she wants that child to grow. She wants things from that child. She wants that child to grow, to be nourished, to be successful. That's selfish, isn't it? So if you put yourself in the position of, as a child, you're looking at love being given to you as being unselfish, and then somewhere along the line when you get into adulthood, you suddenly are selfish because you want to see things your way. You want it to be your way. And we're all selfish. Every single one of us are selfish. And this is the way that we've been heading for years and years and millions of years. We're just getting more and more selfish and more wrapped up in this is the way I want it. None of us would happily live our life in a way we don't want it to be. and we're continually trying to make our life be. That is our egos. We are all like living from the egos. I want this and I want that and I want this for you. Like, I want this for you. That's still being selfish on my part. That's my ego. So I hope you can understand where I'm coming from here. And it's a complicated and very deep way of thinking, but it's been playing in my mind for weeks about this higher consciousness side of us and the ego side of us and how we blend the two rather than living so much from the ego. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject.